This is something that happened a few years ago. Our house has a rooftop. Rooftop sounds fancy, but it's nothing special. More like a simple place to hang laundry. The stairs up to the roof are outside the house. Narrow metal service stairs, right beside my second floor window. The window has bars and a mosquito screen. Without them, someone could easily open it from the stairs and be in my room in a second. My room is on the second floor, Yui's territory, as my little brother jokes, and my bed is right beside that window. I have a much younger little brother, Kenta. He was still in primary school back then. He'd often go up to the roof with his friends and get scolded by our parents for it being dangerous. He'd run up the stairs, peer through my window and call out, "Hey, big sis." One night I woke up. Oh, it's still the middle of the night, I should get back to sleep, I thought. You know, we all have those thoughts when we wake up for no reason and it's still dark all around. I was drifting in and out of sleep when I heard clank, clank, metal treads taking weight, footsteps coming up the stairs. They stopped right about level with my window. Ah, it's Kenta again, I thought, all sleepy. And then I immediately realized, wait, isn't it the middle of the night? There's no way that's him at this time of night. I kept my eyes shut, and the only thing running through my head was, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. And for a second I thought, a ghost? But it could have just as easily been a burglar or just some creep. The curtain was open, and because it was early summer, the window was open too, with only the bug screen in place. The room was lit by the little night light bulb. From the stairs you could see straight in, at that angle. If I opened my eyes now, we'd make eye contact for sure. Whoever it was, ghost, burglar, or creep, they were right there. There are bars on the windows so that they can't climb in, but through the gaps it'd be easy to stick an arm inside. A faint, stale cigarette smell drifted through the screen. No one in our house smokes. My head went into panic. I couldn't move. I just pretended to be asleep. If I moved or made a sound and the person outside the window spoke to me, that would be too much to handle. Without looking towards the window, I stayed like that, rigid for a while. Outside the window it stayed completely silent. No retreating steps, no roof door, just the tiny tick of my nightlight. Without looking toward the window, I slipped out of bed and I went downstairs and I ran to my parents' room on the first floor. I told them what happened. They first peeked out of the first floor window towards the stairs and then they said, "No one there. What are you doing?" I was too scared to look myself, but apparently there was really no one on the stairs. My parents said, "Just maybe it's a stray cat or something," but I'm sure it was human footsteps. I mean, cats skitter, right? But this was heel to toe waked. And even if it was a cat, it had stopped right in front of my window. And yet when they looked from the first floor, there was no one there. It just doesn't add up. I didn't hear anything leave, is what I'm getting at. If it had gone away, we should have heard footsteps on the stairs again, right? In the end, nothing happened. But I couldn't go back to my room that night. In the morning, in the daylight, I noticed that the screen mesh by the latch had a shallow dent, like a thumb or a finger had tested it. Also, my mum mentioned that the garbage shed down the lane had been rifled through a few days earlier. I didn't ask any more. Sorry for the silly long post, it's not that scary. It was about a week ago. I took my daughter out for a night drive to clear our heads. We ate cheap set meals at a roadside shokudo along the national route. Ginger pork for me, kids curry for her. And we left around 9:30. The air had that damp green smell you get after sunset in the hills. Out past the last convenience store, the road went quiet. No pavements, just reflector posts, and the odd farmhouse lights set back from the tarmac. We kept to an ordinary mountain road for a while, talking about school and songs on the radio, when a narrow spur cut off towards the trees, a rough lane people use for forestry trucks. I said, half joking, "Hey, should we test our courage a bit?" She groaned, "No, Dad, don't," which for me was exactly the wrong encouragement. I turned the wheel anyway, and we bumped in a few 100 meters. Gravel ticked the underbody. The smartphone app spun once and lost its bars. It was darker there than I expected. No streetlights, only the car's low beams flattened the brush, and a white road marker every so often. I told her it was fine, we'd loop back to the main road in just a minute. Then, without warning, the engine coughed, the dash lights dipped, and the car rolled to a stop. I tried the key. Once, twice, nothing. The hazard switch clicked, but the indicators were weak. We were far enough into the hills that phones showed no service. Crickets. No cars passed in either direction. I'm no good with engines, and she was starting to worry. Walking back to the diner would take hours, even in the daylight. We talked it through, locked the doors, cracked the windows for air, and decided to sleep in the car until first light, and then start walking in the morning from there. While we were huddled in the car together warm, night fell. At night, the mountains don't make any sound at all. Sometimes a bit of wind would stir and the trees would rustle, but that's about it. Time crawled by, and my daughter finally dozed off in the passenger seat. I thought, alright, I should get some sleep too. So I closed my eyes, and then I heard something. Even now it's hard to describe. I couldn't tell if it was a voice or some kind of sound going over and over.
10 cancel minutes.
At first I tried to tell myself I was mishearing it. I kept my eyes shut, but it felt like the sound was getting closer and closer, and I couldn't stand it. I opened my eyes. There was a white, featureless something coming towards the car in this jerky, weird movement. Its shape looked like that Ultraman monster, Jamila. A headless outline. It seemed to have one leg. Hi, Jay here. For anybody who doesn't know what the hell that is, and I didn't know what it was, I'm going to put a picture up on screen now. Back to the story. It came on. If I had to describe it, it was like it was hopping on one leg while flailing both arms around, its whole body kind of shaking and blurring. I was terrified. I felt a shout building. But for some reason all I could think about was, don't wake my daughter. So I didn't scream and I didn't run. I just stayed frozen, there. It kept closing in on the car, but it looked like it was going to pass alongside us. Even while it passed, that sound kept going.
10 soul minutes.
The sound grew faint, and when I looked over my shoulder there was nothing behind us, so I let out a breath and turned back towards my daughter. And it was at the passenger window. Up close, where I thought this thing had no head, there was a face on its chest. It was smiling this horrible, greasy grin I don't want to remember. The fear snapped into anger that it had come so close to my kid, and I yelled, "You bastard!" In the instant I shouted, it vanished, and my daughter jolted awake. I thought I'd scared her with my shouting, and I started to apologize, but my daughter started muttering,
I got in, 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 I got in.
This was bad. I needed us out of there. I tried the ignition on a wing and a prayer, and miraculously, it caught. I hurried back the way we came. Beside me, my daughter kept whispering under her breath. I wanted to get to people fast, so I pushed down on the accelerator. Finally, the town lights came into view, and I felt a bit of relief, but then I realized her mutter had shifted from,
I got in, to 10 soul minutes. 10 soul minutes.
And her face. It didn't look like her face anymore. I couldn't take her home like that, so I pulled into the first temple I spotted, and I ran in. It was late, but there were lights on in the residence next to the temple, where the priest lives, I guess. So I rang the bell, half dragging my daughter. The man who seemed to be the priest came out, took one look at her, then rounded on me. "What did you do?" I told him we went to the mountains and we saw something weird. He looked pained, like he already knew the type, and said it was only a stopgap, but he started chanting and smacking her shoulder and back with quick, firm strikes. He told us to stay the night, and I was worried about her, so we accepted, and he let us in. According to the priest, my daughter had something on her. He called it Yamanoke. If things stay like this for 49 days, he said, she may be stuck that way forever, never back to herself. He said he'd take her in and do what he could to drive the Yamanoke out so it wouldn't come to that. We phoned my wife together, the priest and I, and somehow got her to believe us. The priest also said if I'd have taken her straight home, the Yamanoke would likely have jumped to my wife. It seems like the Yamanoke attaches to women until it's fully purged. My wife can't see our daughter. It's been a week and she's still at the temple. I go to check on her every day, but she's not my daughter anymore. She keeps that same greasy little grin and looks at me with eyes that I can't describe. I just want her back, the way she was. Listen, don't go into the mountains. This was about 5 years ago. I'd gotten into uni and finally moved out on my own. Maybe it was the rush of being out from under my parents' eyes, but I got into wandering around at night. Before I lived alone, they were overprotective. Going out late just wasn't allowed. It's an area with loads of students, so even after midnight, you'd still pass people. Folks straggling home from drinks and the like. So it didn't really feel that scary. But I'm jumpy by nature, so yeah, walking alone through a quiet residential area after midnight, and the buildings were mostly rundown flats, should have been scary. Honestly, it was, but if you walk a bit and you pass a few people, that kind of takes the edge off. One night though, I went for a long stretch without seeing anyone. I was getting spooked and thinking I should call it and head back. Just then I spotted someone up ahead. I felt relieved. Alright, I'll keep going for a bit. And as I passed him, he suddenly beamed at me and said, "Are you looking for something?" That's what he said. I couldn't tell you what he was wearing, but I can still picture his face. Do you know the film One Cut of the Dead? Imagine the Kansai dialect auntie in that, only more collapsed and aged. That sort of face, but he was a man. Hi, Jay here. I will put a link in the description. Sorry, I can't put it on the screen. Copyright. Back to the story. And the bit that really made my skin crawl, even though my eyesight's bad and I've got night blindness, for some reason he was the only thing I could see clearly. I couldn't answer properly. I just stammered, no, and got away from there. He didn't follow or try anything else, but I was rattled, so I took a roundabout way home to avoid crossing paths with him again. On the road outside my building, I was jittery, scanning for him, feeling like he had followed me for some reason. But he wasn't there, so I relaxed and I went inside. The moment I shut the door, the chime rang, and it properly startled me. I hadn't even taken off my shoes. I was at the Gankan. I didn't bother taking them off, and I ran a few meters into my room. That's the first time I've never taken my shoes off at home. My parents would kill me if they saw that. But then I turned back towards the door and just stayed there, stuck, fixated on it for a while. 5 minutes, 10, I don't know, something like that. The chime had only rung that one time, so I figured there couldn't be anyone still there. But then I checked the peephole, and he was there. That revolting smile, full face. My legs went. I gave up on taking off the shoes, and I dived under the futon. It's a small student flat, You can see the door from the bed. From the door I kept hearing, "Are you looking for something? Are you looking for something? Are you looking for something?" on repeat. I was terrified. I couldn't look away. Then the mail slot, the posting flap, clicked open. It's a shabby building. There's nothing on the inside to cover it, so you can look straight through. If he peers in, that's it, I was thinking. The mail slot clicked, and a folded flyer slid and hit the floor with a soft thud. Another followed. Paper, drag, then thud. On the third one, something inside made a small metal tap on the boards. I stayed under the futon and I didn't move. I watched the bottom of the door. From that strip of space, just a line of light. His voice kept the same rhythm. "Is this it? Is this it? Is this it?" He sounded delighted, like he could barely hold laughter in. Little hitching giggles. I waited for a lull. His voice thinned out, then drifted down the corridor. A moment later, the building's entrance door did that heavy catch and close sound. After that, nothing. No steps coming back. Just the fridge click and a pipe ticking. I stayed put. No peeking. No calls. I watched the ceiling until the room went from black to early grey. When it was light and the corridor was quiet, I got up and put the chain on, and I checked the floor by the slot. There was a small stack of flyers. The top one was folded over, a plain silver key taped in place with a neat note. "I found what you were looking for. It's yours." I slid everything in a plastic bag and I shut the mail slot. Nothing's ever happened since, and I stopped my late night wandering. I covered the mail slot with tape, but I couldn't afford to move. This all happened in the eastern side of Tokyo. I've never tried that key on anything. I don't know if it's even mine or not, but some nights when the building's quiet, I picture a lock nearby that fits, and someone on the other side, smiling like that, asking if I'm still looking for something. This is an experience from over 10 years ago. When I took a bike I was looking after for a senior, I had it for a year and a half, and headed out on a night ride. I left Chiba City and reached Katsuura a little after 2 a.m. On the way out I'd used a busy main road, so there were plenty of cars going my way and oncoming. I was passing other vehicles all the time. For the return I deliberately chose a mountain road with little traffic. I cruised the national route from Katsuura towards Kamogawa. Then from around Amatsuko Minato, I turned off onto prefectural route 81. The whole road is paved, but it threads through narrow sections that feel like a mountain path of forestry road, which makes it great fun on a bike. In daytime, I'd taken it many times. It was one of my favorite courses. I hear there's a wide, proper tunnel there now. But back then, the only tunnel was a narrow thing that looked hand-dug. And going through that at deep night was seriously frightening. It was so tight, it felt like if you were driving a car, you'd be scraping the ceilings or the sides. The lighting in there was poor, and it sat in a place where, even if you had an accident, no one's gonna notice, until the morning at least. Up to then, I never once seen anything like a ghost. I'd even heard that if you don't see one by adulthood, you never would. So I didn't feel that ghostly fear of night roads at all. But that tunnel, if something showed up in there, it wouldn't be surprising. That was the only place I was thinking about. Can I pass through that calmly or not at night? And that's when it happened. Long before that tunnel, I'd worked my way through a winding narrow stretch, then crossed a spot, squeezed down to almost one lane, where they seemed to be repairing a landslide. Past that, a straightaway of about 30 meters appeared. I flicked on the headlight to high beam. It picked out the railing of a bridge at the far end. The instant I saw that bridge, I had a powerful, bad feeling hit me. Before I knew it, I'd grabbed the brakes hard, like a panic stop. The road surface was a bit wet, so the rear tire slid, but the bike still stopped in the shortest distance. The headlight dimmed, pulsing brighter and darker with the idle. The road ahead, floating faintly into view, bent sharply right just before the bridge, so from where I was it felt like I was seeing the bridge side on. It ran away toward the right back and into the trees, and I could only see a small part of it. Even dimmed, the area the headlight hit was as bright as if a flash had gone off. Outside that cone of light, there was pitch black, an ink-dark space that looked like it refused living people. Up to that spot just before the bridge, there had been weak streetlights at reasonable intervals, but for some reason the bridge section had no streetlight glow at all. Maybe the bulbs were dead. I stayed put, trying to figure out why this felt so wrong. But other than missing lights, nothing really looked that off. I set it back into first gear, eased out the clutch, and as soon as I began to roll, that crushing sense of rejection came back, and I couldn't bring myself forward. I stopped again. Still, in the area, I could see nothing. I glanced at my watch, just past 2:30 a.m. I considered a U-turn, going back the way I came, but it was all downhill, and the lane was very narrow. Even on a bike, I'd have to do several back and forth movements to turn around. More than that, I just had a feeling that I didn't want to be fumbling around in a place like this. By now, my whole body was yelling at me to get away. Ignoring that instinctive aversion, I dropped into gear and pushed through. As I approached the bridge, its shape came clear. Still, I didn't see anything strange. Feeling silly, I crossed in one go. Then once over it, I stopped and looked back. Again, nothing. I stayed there a bit, watching, relieved, wondering what all this unease had been. I faced forward again and checked the rear view mirror one more time. There was blackness behind me. But at that moment, something white slid across the front. A chill ran straight through me, and I jerked my eyes towards it, and in that instant, the engine stalled. The headlight held the white something for a beat, and then it faded out fast. I was in the dark. The shock ripped a shout out of me, and I spun into a panic. I don't know about other bikes, but the one I borrowed cuts the headlight with the engine, so I was wrapped in total darkness. Hands groping, I found the Kickstarter pedal and worked like mad. Once, twice, 3 times. Only that hollow drum sound echoed out, no sign of catching. But with each kick, the headlight flickered dimly for a moment, and in that window I could make out the outline of a person in white clothing ahead, 5 or 6 meters away maybe. It looked like the back of a woman with long hair, in something like a pale one-piece dress. Staring straight at the shape, I was thinking, why won't you start? I opened the throttle a touch and kicked hard again, and this time the engine caught. But once the headlight was fully bright, it lit up empty air. That white back, which had been so solid a moment before, had vanished. There was no one ahead of me. I did not want to go any closer to that spot, but turning around here scared me too, and I didn't think I could bring myself to look back into the pure black behind me. I stayed put, unable to move, unable to do anything at all, trying to analyze what I'd just seen, even supposing it was a real person, in a place this dark, on a lonely road like a forestry track at 2:30 a.m. Would a woman be there alone, with no light in hand? No matter how I turned it over in my head, it didn't seem possible. And standing there, turned away from me at the edge of a road, not moving, that didn't feel like something a living person would do. On top of that, dense trees lined both sides. Even if she had slipped into them, there's no way she'd disappear this completely in that short of an instant. Shaking, stuck there, going forward or back both felt impossible. When suddenly, right by my ear, I heard a woman's hollow voice. Clearly. Help me look. I just can't find it. I think I heard something more after that, but by then, I wasn't staying put. Like a racer when the green signal lights, I launched out of there and left that place, not looking back once. After that, nothing else happened. I got home safely, and I didn't feel any strange after effects. But I never figured out what those words at my ear meant. At the time, I searched online, but I couldn't find any reports of incidents or accidents around that bridge. But maybe something happened there in the past. Maybe even now, in the deep of night, she's still out there, still searching for something she can't find. This happened when I was in primary school. My parents were idiots, honestly. They dragged me and my little brother out to the game center and let us play all night until late. Then we'd eat out, and afterwards we'd ride our bikes home in the middle of the night. This happened several times a week. Back then it felt normal, so I didn't question it. But yeah, it's pretty stupid when you think about it now. On the way home, always late at night, there was this back lane we had to pass. It was narrow, with a weird bend. It had one of those convex curved mirrors. Cars couldn't get through there. As usual, we were heading home at around 1 in the morning, me and my brother pushing the pace, trying to beat each other around the bend. In the mirror, I saw an old woman. From the angle, it was clear that she was standing in front of the gate of the corner house. We took the bend and, just as the mirror showed, there she was. An old woman standing at the gate. Her head was tilted down, and in her hand, she was gripping a sickle. At that hour, you don't really see people, or even bikes, on that path. No streetlights either. It's properly dark. It felt unnatural, so we kept quiet and rolled past. I said to my brother, "That old lady was odd. Maybe they won't let her in the house." He said, "Yeah, that was creepy." The next night, same route. We passed the spot, and again the old woman was there with the sickle, standing at the gate. I said to my brother, "She's there again." This time he said, "No, she wasn't." 3 or 4 days later, we were back on that path, around the same late hour. This time the old woman was inside the gate, standing in front of the door of the house, still holding that sickle. In the curved mirror, she didn't appear at all. So when we came around the corner and she was suddenly there, I screamed out loud as we rode past. That time, our mum was keeping pace with us, so I asked her, "Mum, that old lady was inside the gate, right? Why is she always standing outside at this hour?" Mum said she didn't see anyone. I asked my brother, and he said she wasn't there. For about a week after that, we didn't take that route. When we finally went through again, there was a mourning notice posted on the corner house. I realized someone there had died. At the same time, I started to wonder if that old woman had been a shinigami, a reaper of sorts. I haven't seen that old woman with the sickle since. It happened when I was 20. Both of my mum's parents went down, almost at once. Cancer, and a tangle of other things, and they were admitted together. The house suddenly felt quiet, in a way that I didn't like. Grandma asked me, "While we're away, can you keep an eye on the place?" So I moved in for a while. I'd spent half my childhood there anyway. The rooms were already familiar. I'd been planning to live on my own, but this time, it wasn't about independence. It was just being there, for them, and keeping the lights on. But my aunt, Keiko, and my cousin, Rina, said, "We'd worry about you if you were alone," and decided to stay there with me. This is a bit of a tangent, but my mother's side is what you call a can-see family. I sometimes see things clearly. You know, people who have spiritual sensitivity. I sometimes see things clearly, and I have a body that tends to bring things back with me, it seems. Usually my sense is only at the level of something's here or this spot is bad, but my cousin's intuition is especially strong. My aunt generally doesn't see much, but she once ran into a zashiki warashi, a house spirit, at work. Aside from my mum, most of our family can half see, and because of that, a lot of us call things over or bring them home without meaning to. There was one room my cousin and I absolutely avoided at Gran and Grandpa's place. Across from the upstairs room, where the family Butsudan, the Buddhist altar, are two Western-style rooms divided by a sliding fusuma, sliding doors that separate rooms. For some reason, those rooms were the ones that we could not stand. It wasn't that we saw something there, or that something bad had happened there. But for a house only 20 years old, the atmosphere there was very creepy. We wanted no part of it. Later, my cousin said, "I can see our passed-on ancestors, right? You know that. But whatever's in this room, it isn't them. If it were great-grandma, it wouldn't feel that awful." So my cousin and I slept on the first floor, and only my aunt slept upstairs, in that room. And about 2 weeks into the arrangement, my aunt said, "Hey, let's go get a coffee." And I went along. And that's when she started telling me something odd. About 3 days after she began sleeping upstairs, she woke up one morning to find the fusuma that divide the western rooms were open by about 5 centimeters. Huh? Didn't I close that yesterday? She thought that, but didn't dwell on it. Even so, the question wouldn't leave her head that night. So that night, after confirming the fusuma was properly closed, she went to sleep. The next morning when she woke, the fusuma was still closed. Oh, so it was just my imagination, she thought. She was about to feel relieved when she noticed now the door was open by 5 centimeters. That door has a poor latch and often sits half closed. So she told herself, coincidence? And tried not to worry about it. But the fusuma thing from the other day still nagged at her. So that night she made sure the fusuma and the door were properly closed before sleeping. Next morning, both the fusuma and door were still closed. However, the small storage hatch above the walk-in closet, it's up around 2 meters high, was standing wide open. You need a stepped stool to reach that hatch. My aunt is short and couldn't possibly get to it. It wasn't like my cousin and I would go out of our way to enter that room and open it either. With the fusuma, the door, and now the storage hatch, even my aunt started to feel uneasy. That night too, she checked the fusuma, the door, and the storage hatch, and then went to bed. But when she woke the next morning, now the curtains were open by 5 centimeters. At that point, my aunt was nearly neurotic with it. That night, she went around everything that could be opened, fusuma, door, store hatch, curtains, and checked them over and over to make sure that there was no way that they would naturally open. And then she slept. And the next morning, my aunt went rigid. The fusuma, the door, the storage hatch, the curtains, everything was open by 5 centimeters. My aunt fled downstairs and said this to me. 5 centimeters, you know? That's exactly about the width somebody needs to look through with one eye. Has someone been watching me every night? After that, when we told my mother, she answered with a hesitant, yeah. She didn't tell us the details, but apparently when she was young, she slept in that room. And she had an out-of-body experience. In other words, if you sleep in that room, something will happen, one way or another. A little over 20 years since it was built. A house my grandparents built themselves. A house where no one but our family has lived. In that upstairs room, there's something that shouldn't be there.